And good evening! Welcome to Monday. As the entire internet dissolves into chaos around us, we are still here. Well, what a strange, situation. Waffle time could commence. Anyway, lovely to see you all. Commander Terakov is here. Dan Technic is here. JR1988 is here. Parenthophobia is here. Nim Tuskrin is here. Glenn is here. Commander Terra Firma. Gigi's here, Heavaboo is here as well, Stumpy73 is here, everybody's here, this is good. Anyway, welcome one, welcome all, welcome back to Monday. So it's all chaos. It's obviously October, isn't it? Yes, yeah, everything, it's just that month of mischief and chaos and things. And Kelly Baglar's here as well, excellent. Birdbrain is here as well, DO977, excellent. Good to see you all, I almost wasn't here, so apologies for terrifying you with my potential absence, but our internet went down, oddly enough, within a few minutes of the whole Facebook thing disappearing offline as well. So I in my head, I was like, okay, this looks a bit weird. So for a while, it was totally apocalyptic. I almost had to sit down, have a cup of tea and read a book. That's how bad it was. It was almost like being back in the 80s. So there we are, and I don't know what's happened. I mean, I've had a quick look online just as I was coming ready for the stream, and it appears that Facebook's DNS entry has gone. It just isn't there. So no internet server in the world knows where Facebook is. So and apparently, if their DNS record is gone, it means that none of their email is working internally, and apparently even their office booking systems won't be working because they're all Internet of Things connected. So it could be that the whole Facebook system is offline for a little while. And I have no idea whether this is somebody's. It's probably somebody's made a real big administrative cock up somewhere. But it could be something more exciting, of course, couldn't it? It could be that they've been hacked and bad things are afoot. So who knows? Blue Tree here for the first time. Oh, hello, Blue Tree. Thank you very much for coming along. It's always nice to see new people. Thank you very much. That's great. Thank you for the subscribe there, Gigi, as well. That's always good. Thargoids or the Sentinels. So I don't understand enough about how this is all connected out, but yes, it's bad. And of course, if it has been hacked, then what does that mean for our data and all of us who do use Facebook for things? Because there's important stuff on there, like all my puns and all my dad jokes. What if I can't get them back? This is serious, But of course, if you do put anything vaguely confidential on Facebook, which of course you shouldn't really do, because my chair's the wrong height there, sorry about that, then I don't know, we'll have to wait and see, won't we, find out what's going on. So it does make you wonder. And then of course everybody piling onto Twitter to go, is Facebook down? Yes, it's down. Why is Facebook down? Don't know. Twitter is suddenly becomes the only social media hub that's still working. And then all the jokes, so Winnie's touched on it there. All the Facebook's down, better get back onto Friends Reunited and AOL and Yahoo and things like that. From the dim and distant past of the internet. It's okay, you've got a backup of dad jokes on Twitter, so I can always get back to dear. So there we go. Dio1977, we miss you in the Elite Law series. What's happened to Sasha? Well, I mean that's worthy of a stream in itself, which is probably not relevant to this evening. But I do plan to get back to the whole Elite Retribution thing with Sassia, which for those of you who don't know what that is, that was a kind of in-game storytelling in an online MMO called Elite Dangerous. Unfortunately, because of the state of the game at the present, it's not viable for me to do that. But we will. I do intend to get to it once the game is in the place where we can. But at the moment, the game doesn't work properly, which is a big issue really. And the other one is that because the player base is fractured by the different versions of the game, and different people on consoles and all sorts of things going different, we can't get everybody in the same place. Just can't do it at the moment. So we're kind of waiting for that to happen before we can plan big community events. So fully intend to do it. Can't do it right now. I'll store the bits and pieces on my Discord in the meantime, so stay tuned there for that. I left some unfinished business. Yes, I did. Well, I mean, it's the end. It was end of the season. You need an end of the season cliffhanger, right? So that's what we had. But season 2, I'm hopeful it's not going to end up like like Firefly. You know, it's one season. That's it. It's like, no, don't do that. I don't want to do that. But we kind of need the game to be working again. So, like Birdbrain says, PS4 play. I'd like to bring the consoles in, but there is no Odyssey for consoles right now. We could do it all in Horizons, of course, but we kind of played out all the possibilities of Horizons. The idea was that was a little bit of a stopgap while we were waiting for Odyssey, and of course now we're still waiting for Odyssey, kind of. So it's kind of can't really do. But there we go. So fingers crossed. Once Elite Dangerous Odyssey is fixed, we can go back there. But on the plus side, that would mean a movie to wrap it up. Now that'd be quite good, wouldn't it? An Elite Dangerous movie. That would be fun. We'll see how it goes. And a shame they can't do crossplay. Yes, well, No Man's Sky did it, so come on, it's possible. But there we go. But that's classic British. Just the one leaving you wanting more. Well, I might get lynched if I tried that. But never mind. Anyway, so we will get back there at some point in the future. I hope. Now the other news today, which I'm rather pleased about, is move Sassy over to No Man's Sky. I suppose I could try that. But that'd be a bit weird, wouldn't it? My other news today is Shadewood. I've finally today, actually, I think it was actually last week, because my publisher generally communicates with me on Facebook Messenger, I can't talk to him at the moment. So I have no idea what's going on in the world of publishing. Is that my last audiobook, or my currently last audiobook, it hopefully won't be my last audiobook, but the last one I've been working on has been published. I think it came out over the weekend at some point. And that's it. I've finished. So Shadewood 4, the last book in my Shadewood Saga series, just came out on Audible, which is the recorded, obviously, speech version. And as a result of that, that is the last product in that series. Winnie 1974, really, why was this not communicated? Well, it was. It's on Twitter. If you look at my Twitter feed, it's there. And if you'd signed up to my newsletter, you would have received that in the email this afternoon. So either you haven't been watching my Twitter, or you haven't been signed up to my newsletter. In which case, wiki child. So anyway, so it's out, which is pretty much 10 years. To the day that I started working on it. So 2011 to 2021. So I follow Twitter. I know nothing about said newsletter. Okay, well there's if you go to my website, hang on, I can even give you the link because I'm good like this. Where is it? Here's the link. If you want to, I mean, it depends. If you're the kind of person who likes getting a newsletter, go here. And you can sign up to my newsletter, and then you'll get a nice email about every 6 months about all the stuff I'm doing. Okay, it's a big digest of all the news. Okay, if you want to follow me day by day, you can do that on Twitter, which is where I spend most of my time posting about things, or procrastinating about things, not writing, and dad jokes, of course. Where you will get all the information, but you'll get it in between all the silly stuff that I do as well. So you can follow me on Twitter, but do be prepared for lots of silly puns and all sorts of stuff like that. But the newsletter is kind of the condensed version, which is sensible. I sort of put on a vaguely professional persona when I write my newsletter, and it just gives you the basic stuff. So there we go. So Shadewood is done. So that's kind of my first big series under my belt, as it were, under my hat. So I came up with the idea of that back in 2010, started writing on it in 2011, and literally I finished it. I mean, I finished writing it last year, so it's kind of 9 years, but it took me a while to get all the audio stuff caught up and finished. So 10 years for 4 books in ebook, paperback and Audible form as a thing done out there. Which is a nice feeling, actually. It does, I feel like I've come to the end of a massive project. Amazing you can fit those books under that hat. I know. Well, the ebooks are much smaller, you see. They fit better. Winnie Phil, but where do I order the Shadewood merch? Right, okay, so Shadewood merch, I'm afraid at the moment is offline because I had a problem with my website. The hosting provider that was hosting it decided that this year they were going to basically not go out of business, but just stop. And as a result of that, I've had to transfer my website and everything about it to a new domain. Now, unfortunately, that wasn't straightforward because I'd hacked around with my website over the course of about 8 years and customized it to death, of course doing it properly without documenting anything. So when I tried to import it into a new system, it kind of fell in a heap. So what I've done is it's now working up again and is running on modern software, and it's about 6 times as fast as it used to be, which is a good thing. What I haven't done yet is I haven't put the shop material back. It is on my list of things to do, so I'll get that done as soon as possible. So yes, so apologies for that. Yes, that is coming. So it's on its way. So the next 10 years basically is the next 4 books. So it seems based on my progress to date, although I've actually written more books in that time frame. So actually since 2011 to 2021, I have written the 4 Shadewood books. I've written 2 Elite books. I've written Lords of Midnight as well. And Doom Dark Revenge is kind of almost done. It's, just literally, I'm in the final typos and things and that's going off to the publisher for editing. So I'm going to count that one as well. So that gives me a total I've written 8 books in 10 years. How's that? Okay. Is that good? So 8 books in 10 years. That's not quite a book. No. It's not quite a book a year, is it? It's about a book every 14 months, I would guess. Something like that. I don't think that's too bad. Now, in an ideal world, that should go a little bit faster now. But I don't know if it will, because A, I'm getting a bit older, and B, the amount of spare time I have nowadays seems to be going down. It should be going up, I figure, but it seems to be going down. It's just the way the world works. But basically, my next thing is to do my next 4 book series, for which I'm now currently working on the lore, which we were talking about a little bit about last week, about timelines and maps and guides and characterization and all that kind of good stuff. So that's and I do apologies, I do owe everybody a document which I promised last week and I haven't done yet. So I will put that up on my Discord as well. Now I'm independently wealthy, I should be able to write faster, right? Yeah, that independently wealthy thing. I'm still working on that. Mr. Fukinmu, someone internally screwed an update on the Border Gateway protocol within Facebook. Okay, so it's an internal cock-up. That's actually rather more reassuring than that it's been hacked and all our data's out there. So that's quite good. Can I get an invite to the Drew Wager Discord? You can, Chris. Now, what I can do for the benefit of those of you who are not here, I can fire up Discord, and I think I can get a new thing and dump it into the chat right this moment. So let me do that. Mecha Jolito says, greetings Joe, I've been enjoying watching your lore streams of the past few weeks. Nice to see you live. Yeah, so hopefully there will be some more Elite Dangerous stuff in the future. I certainly want to do some more, but I do I want Elite Dangerous Odyssey to be working. There's stuff I can do there, but we need a stable foundation to build upon. So that will be coming. Right, let's sort out this. Invite people. Here we go. Right. Right. There we go. Generate a new link. Copy the button. Right. Here is the link to the Discord. So if you want to join my Discord, it is there. There it is there. So that's kind of good. So yes, and there's a writing channel which I will put some stuff in. The first thing I do owe you is a writing construct guide that I said I would do last week, and I haven't done yet. So apologies for that. I will get to sort that out. Allegedly, says Mr. Fukumu. So yes, well, fingers crossed. It isn't a hack, but I guess we'll see. So 8 books in 10 years, that's not bad actually, is it? Not bad. And those books are fairly chunky, so my books tend to be longer than the average. My short books are a little over 100k, which is like, what, really, what? Which actually gives me a problem for some traditional publishers. They just well, that's too long. Make it shorter. So I don't want to make it shorter. It's the right length because I am Dru. And I always say I am Dru in that same sort of I am Groot sort of way. I am Dru, and I'm going to do what I damn well like. The thing is. This is a big thing with authors and writers and all sorts of things. Why do you want to write? Okay, why do you want to be an author? Now, some people are desperate to be famous. Okay, and I get that. Being recognised. Well, actually, to be honest, having been a recognisable person in a very small piece of fandom. Okay, so if I go to, for example, probably not now, possibly so much, but certainly a few years ago, if I went to an Elite themed. And Elite is this computer game, okay, for those of you who don't know it. If I went to an Elite themed convention, I would not be able to move around without being recognised. And for the first couple of times, that's quite fun, all right? Yeah, I will admit, it's like, oh, it's Dru. Yeah, well, I know it's me, all that sort of stuff. That's fun, okay, for a bit. And then it gets really annoying. Because you can't go anywhere, you can't have a conversation with anybody without somebody else kind of queuing up to have a chat with you. Which is okay, but after like 8 hours, it's exhausting. And for me, being a kind of introvert person by default, okay, it's very draining. And I was really relieved then. I said, well, I can go away from this convention. When I go away from this place, nobody will know who I am, and then I'm back to being anonymous, just like everybody else. And it was a real relief to be actually properly famous. I think would be really, really, really bad. I think I would hate it. I can't imagine anything worse than being followed around to different places. Oh, look, it's Dru. That would be horrible. No matter where you went, okay, you would turn up on just some train platform, or you go to the airport, or you try and go for a nice walk in the countryside, or you go to a nice country pub, and then it's Dru. Can I have your autograph? That would be horrible. Okay, so I think that whole kind of famous thing is a double-edged sword. Some people are after that, but I would counsel caution if that's what you're after, because I don't think you'd like it if you got it. Some people are just there for the money, okay, and to them I basically say you've just chosen probably the hardest way to make some cash that you can possibly imagine. Writing books to make money is probably the least successful way you could go about it. So very, 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 very few people make a lot of money writing books. I'm sorry, that's just how it is. It's just not realistic, okay? So when in 1974 says I can't go anywhere anyway because I'm going to fuel, that's exactly right. I mean, some people do get very rich. Okay, there's that. It's like anything. There's that. It's with writing. It's a. Oh, I can't. I'm just doing this from the camera. It's a curve that kind of goes. Almost nobody earns any money. The top 0.001%. Boom, they earn lots of money. Okay, that's just the luck of the game. Okay, and the older I get, and the more I read, the more I am convinced it is literally just luck. Okay. Because I've read some stuff, and some of the authors who make a lot of money, I think, yeah, their stuff's all right. It's okay. I've read better from people who most people have never heard of. I think it happens to be a combination of good enough writing, mostly marketing, and being in the right place at the right time. I think those things really have to mix up really, really well to be a writer who makes a lot of money. The vast majority of authors are, even if they're successful with one book, they're only going to be successful with one book, and then maybe people forget about them. To stay on the bestseller lists, I think, is another type of craft. You've got to be able to crank out the same thing again for an audience that will consume whatever you write. And I think that's quite a unique set of talents. And I'm not sure it's necessarily good writing. I don't know. So there we go. Go undercover and get a false moustache. You said. That could be fun. Yeah. I'm Dru, and so is my wife. Adrian Eon31. If I saw you on the street, I bet I'd run up to you and take a picture. Ah, that's very sweet. A bit creepy, but very sweet. The petrol station attendant didn't recognise you last week. No, to be honest, outside of an elite convention, I'm nobody who knows who I am, which is fine. Okay. The only time I have once been recognised, and it was by my postman. I had a new postman several years. This is the only time it's happened, so it's not like a common thing. A few years, must have been about 4 years ago. A new postman was delivering something to my door, and it was obviously, if you saw it was Drew Wager, 43 Primrose Drive. He says, "You're not the bloke who writes those elite books, are you?" I went, "Yeah, I am actually." And he went, "Oh, cool! I've got one of them." Didn't like it much, I didn't say that. But that's the only time I've ever been recognised out of context. And it was a temporary postman. So there we go. Petrol station attendant didn't recognise. Actually, the petrol station. There's a funny story about the petrol station attendant because I got up at 5 o'clock in the morning. Was it last Tuesday? Must have been. In order to get some diesel because my son's car runs on diesel, and he normally gets up at 6, but he didn't want to have to get to the petrol station and then kind of drive on from work. So I said, "Look, I'll get up at 5, go and queue to get your car full of diesel, come back, and then you can drive to work, and then I can get back to bed." For an hour or two or something. So that seemed to be reasonable. So I went down to the petrol station and got lucky. It just turned up. I got into the queue at the right point, filled up his car, and was back in 10 minutes. And I thought, I wonder if I can sneak my other car down there. So I did. I got my wife's car, which is our kind of big car, estate car, and snuck that into the queue as well. And then got the same petrol attendant lady. and I was wearing a hat. And she said, "I've seen you before somewhere." I said, "Yeah, about 10 minutes ago." So she didn't recognise me, she just recognised me, if that makes sense. So yes, unfortunately my postman, I've never seen him again, so that was my one claim to fame. But there we go. Abana Wicked says, "I'd still recognise Drew with a knife." I need a false moustache now. There we go. It's like when a random YouTube video goes viral after being uploaded for 10 years. I think you're quite right, Mecha Jolita. I think there's a lot of luck involved. I think established writers who've made a name for themselves wouldn't like to say that, because it kind of sort of maybe detracts a little bit from what they have achieved. And you can't take that away from successful people. Successful people are successful people, but there's a lot of luck. Okay, there is a massive amount of luck. The right place at the right time with the right product, the right connections, the right people, just random chance in terms of who looks at what, all that kind of stuff has got to operate in your favour for you to find your way through. This Drew is in the top 1% of all writers. Like it. Kenny Baglass says, "Facebook employees reportedly can't enter buildings to evaluate the internet outage because their door access badges weren't working." I shouldn't laugh, that's quite bad, isn't it? But dear idea. Chris says he discovered I was apparently part of the Discord sometime last year, but I don't remember being part of it. Apologies, my chair, I think that's the vacuum thingy on my chair is busted. I'm slowly sinking down through the stream. So I suddenly stand up like that and then adjust my chair. That's why, okay, because I think my chair's knackered. I've been sitting on it too long. There'll always be, Ozzy says there will always be a percentage of awesome authors and books that only see a minority of us. I think that's inevitable. No matter how good your book is, sometimes it just doesn't get seen. So maybe it's a winter thing on the chairs. Maybe it's Facebook. Maybe my chair's lost its DNS. I don't know. Has anyone ever recognised you as the Drew Wager who got murdered? That was a good story. That was years ago now. I can't remember when that was. Well, yeah, it's not a good story. I mean, somebody died, but I'm fairly lucky. I think I've told this story before, but I'm fairly lucky that I am. Drew Wager is a fairly unusual name, so it's quite useful as an internet thing because Drew Wager. Okay, well, that's a weird name. There aren't many of them on the internet, and I think pretty much the only kind of notable Drew Wager there is of any kind of notoriety. But I did once go on holiday, came back to the office after 2 or 3 weeks, I have kind of one of those religious rules. I don't check my email when I'm on holiday. I just switch all the electronic gizmos off and I'm offline. Okay, I'm off the grid. And came back into the office. And there was lots of people came up to me. Are you okay? I was like, what? Are you okay? You're fine. Yeah. So we heard you've been murdered. What? But apparently, a Dru-ids in 20-something, I can't remember exactly when the date was now, had been murdered, roughly not all that far away from where I'd been on holiday. I never found out any more about it because he was just the other Dru-ids. So of course there's rampant speculation now that I was actually the murderer. I got away with it, just getting rid of all the other Dru-ids in the world. But yeah, so that was that was a bit weird. So I was off grid. My namesake got murdered, and then I came back. Causality does not imply, what is it? Coincidence? No, anyway, whatever that phrase is. So there we go. That's really, really weird. J-Online here says, I'm terrible at recognising people. Drew could take his hat off and he'd be a completely different person to be. Well, that's... Let's not go there. That's all I need to do, actually, thinking about it, isn't it? Because nobody ever sees me without my hat. So if I just go out into the outside world without my hat, complete anonymity, I'm fine. So recognised as not mistaken for the dead guy. That's about Stephen King books. You know, he hits the bestseller list a lot, but I've read them books and not all of them all that good. Osland, I think that's a fair. I don't want to criticise other authors. That's not very nice, is it? Because they could then criticise me. And every author has their off day. We're not all brilliant all the time. That's absolutely true. But I think once it's the same thing with brand recognition. You can get away with a lot with brand recognition. Well, it's a Stephen King novel, therefore it's brilliant. It's kind of like, well, that doesn't necessarily mean that the next one's going to be any good. Hopefully it will be, but there's no guarantee. I mean, I think the Ernest Cline one, Ready Player One and Ready Player Two. Ready Player One I read and rather enjoyed, even though it was a bit kind of US centric on its computer games and terminology and stuff. But Ready Player Two was awful. It was just like someone's basically twisted his arm, write another book because we can cash in on it. Is the impression I got from it, and as a result, the second book, it just isn't good. It just isn't. Those sort of things. So there we go. Anyway, I'm trying to catch up with the chat. Everything needs a new typewriter ribbon today. That's very true. Facebook locked out their server. People making jokes about the Facebook services going down. Anyone who was using an Oculus headset at the time is currently trapped in VR. If they die there, then they'll die in real life. That's a tragedy, actually. Yes, all those poor Oculus users. Is my chair a Facebook chair? Lol. I mean, murdered one, making sure. I have to say, I didn't murder anybody. Okay. I thought you were the doctor who just came back. Maybe that was the other me, and I regenerated. Prompts a story about time travelling and predestination paradoxes. Hang on, what were you doing when you were grid? There could be a mohawk underneath here, who knows? That's right. Nothing that exciting, I'm afraid. It's like Superman, it's that power, so without glasses, nobody recognises him. So there we go. So when you get pushed or forced, sequels mostly flop. And it's... I think you've got to be... I mean, going back to my original point, which probably about 10 minutes ago now, about why do you write? Okay, why do you want to be an author? I think you have to be reasonably honest with yourself. Some people are after the fame and the recognition and the sort of, I'm an author, don't you know? That whole thing. And some people get quite hung up on that. Some people say, will say, I won't be an author until I'm published in the traditional old-fashioned way, which is kind of get yourself an agent, get that agent to put you into a well-known publishing house that your grandmother probably would have heard of, and then your book is pushed out that way. Some people, so your definition of published can also be a little bit strange, and people have different views on those kind of things. So what does it mean nowadays? Why do you want to write? Now for me, I don't really. I'm probably. I mean, all writers are a bit egocentric, okay, because they are. Okay, that's just a given. So there's a little bit of me that goes, yeah, I don't mind being recognised as Drew Wager, the guy who writes some books. That's cool. Do I want some money from them? Well, yeah, it'd be nice, you know. Don't mind earning some money. That's fine. I'm not really here to make millions, though. That's not really why I set out. I don't mind being paid for my efforts, and I don't mind being, maybe a moderately bit famous in certain circles. That would probably suit me okay. I certainly don't want to be an international star or anything like that. That would be horrible. Neither do I think I need lots and lots of money. I'm very content. My family struggles with me every year. They say, "What do you want for your birthday?" And I go, "Well, I don't want anything. I've got everything I want. What else do I need?" I struggle to give people ideas for what to buy me for presents because, well, I say, well, I have everything I want. I've got my family. I've got a car and some other bits I like messing about with in my spare time. I've got my computer set up here, which allows me to do everything I want. I've got time mostly to do my writing. I can walk in the countryside. I've got a dog. I've got my stereo and my record collection. I've got my telescope. I don't need anything else. I've got everything I need. So that's to me, it's not a motivator for me personally to be filthy rich. But I can see that it might be for some people. I write because I like telling stories, and I think I've got enough things that have happened to me in my life that I can feed into my storytelling that makes it interesting. So you've probably seen, those of you who have read my books will know that there's always a strong kind of religion versus technology versus science versus religion again thing mixed into them, and that's a very big part of my upbringing. So I feel I can talk about it quite authoritatively, one of those words. So those sort of things I mix in. I like spending time creating imaginary worlds and imaginary people. I've been doing it ever since I was, knee high to a grasshopper, as they say. So that's just something I like doing, and I like writing stories. I just enjoy writing the craft of putting these things together. Now, the fact that other people also don't mind reading them is kind of like a bonus in some ways. And I do it now because I know people like my stories, and I like to talk about things in my stories that satisfy me. So the kind of stories I write are the kind of stories I would like to read that nobody else has yet written. So that's kind of how I do it. I don't know if that actually makes sense to people, but Aussie, why do you write? Because you enjoy it. That's pretty much it. I like writing, and I like entertaining people, and I like people to then go, oh yeah, that bit, where that happened, that's really good, and that bit to me is the payoff. When people come back to me, oh, that bit you did with the so-and-so, I love that. Or, when she did that, oh, I was like, all that sort of stuff. That's the bit I like. That's what gives me the kind of, yeah, I'm doing a good thing. And, hopefully trying to just generally lift humanity up a little bit, in these dark and dim times when there is no Facebook. So that's kind of where I am with it. I just like it, and you tell me, but hopefully I'm moderately good at it now, since I can put a story together in such a way that I can make a book, and then you can pick it up and go, yeah, that's a good book. I enjoyed that. That was fun. I enjoyed that. It took me away from my troubles. Gave me a bit of escapism for a few hours. That's a good thing. So that's I'm hopefully I'm doing a good thing. That's kind of how I see it. Money is just hype unless you got bills. Well, I mean, I've still got bills, alas. They don't go away. Kamala Jan 1988. Personally, I just need to get my story out of my head, not worried about the money, but it would be nice for it not to remain at a loss and have a steady stream of people who enjoy it. So I think you have to work at it. That's one of the things that I've come across. 8 books. There are 8 books? Yeah, 8 books in 10 years. That's 10 years of work, I suppose. Whilst I've obviously been doing other things as well, but still 10 years of work to get a set of products that are things, the more I do, the more the sort of community around the sort of stuff that I do has grown. So I've 10 years ago I hadn't even heard of Twitch or YouTube. It's like, pardon? The idea of sitting down on a Monday evening and chattering away to a camera would be like, yeah, me? You sure? So things change and you've got to adapt to it. I think that the trick is, the thing that I find very important is to be honest. And when I say honest, I don't mean sort of don't tell fibs and don't tell lies. I mean more just sort of be straightforward, be yourself. I mean, the Dru-ids that's sitting in front of this camera talking to you now is a version of me that is designed for the camera. But I enjoy it. I'm sort of trying. This is me. This is the writer Dru-ids. Ask me a question, I'll give you the answer that I would give you if we were sitting in a pub having a cup of, a pint of beer. It would be lovely to have this Twitch stream in a pub. Okay, that would be perfect. Because we could all be sitting around having beers, talking about stuff, rather than typing in a keyboard. But we're all in different countries, so we can't do that. So this is kind of the equivalent in the sort of modern era, I suppose. And obviously with COVID, we haven't been allowed to go to pubs and all that kind of stuff. But it would be nice. I mean, I'd love to organise a Dru-con, right? And it wouldn't necessarily be about me, but it would just be more kind of, if you like listening to people wittering on about things for no obvious reason for several hours, come to Dru-con, have a beer, and sit around and have a huddle. I think that would be quite good fun. And there'd be all sorts of 8-bit computer games all the way around the edge for you to kind of play with. A waffle con, that would be even better. So how method in finalising a story? Don't you constantly question critique? Well, as I've got older, I mean, you have to critique yourself and you have to be honest about the integrity of your work. But the voices that used to say to me, years ago, "Oh, you can't write. You'll never be any good at this. This don't even go any further. It's not worth pursuing." Those have faded, and I think that's partly confidence and partly having gone there, fought those demons and got some stuff out there and gone, let's see if it's any good, because it's not my opinion that counts, it's the reader's opinion that counts. And people have come back to me with, I've had criticism. Not every review is a glowing 5-star. One of my favourite reviews was a 1-star which basically said, not very good. Thanks. I'll improve then. So, and you will get criticism. Depending on what you're doing and all those various pieces, and you can always improve. There's no doubt about that. But I get to a point now. My internal guide on when a story is finished is basically I generally go through the editing, and I just read it back to myself and say, does this feel right? Does it feel awkward? Does it feel at all contrived? And all the time, I'm getting a kind of like, that's not very good. Don't feel quite happy with that. I just go back and rewrite it, and I do that quite a lot. It takes me quite a long time to go through that iteration, but I allow that slight feeling of discomfort, that slight feeling of ill-ease with the story to basically drive me. That's my sort of litmus test to say, have I made this story as good as I can make it? And all the time it's feeling like, that doesn't really hang together, that dialogue's a bit ropey, that description's too long, or it's too short, or there's not enough there, or I've that scene, I haven't done that to the best of my ability. I'm the sort of person who will go, I just can't leave it in that state, so I just keep going around it, and I let that kind of uneasy feeling hang around until I get to the point, oh, actually that's all right now. And once I get that kind of, no, actually, I think it's kind of okay, and I listen to that sort of inner voice, and once I get to that point, and I'm usually heartily sick and tired of the book by this point, which is pretty much where I am with my latest one, Doomdark's Revenge. It's like, if I never hear the word Doomdark's Revenge ever again, I'll be alright. Because I've been writing this book for 2.5 years now. It's time for something else. I'm kind of getting sick of it, and it's like, good, that means it's ready. Web Metal Reed says, I end up losing coming back to the rough draft and making changes, and I end up second guessing. I think I've always advised people is get the rough draft done first, and then just iterate. Okay, and I've for example, with my latest one, Doomdark's Revenge, I knew roughly how long it was going to be, and it took me a long time to get the second half of the book sorted out because it was a complicated piece. I kind of got up to chapter 10 and it was like, yeah, that feels pretty much okay. And then the complicated stuff started happening. I was like, oh, this is hard work. I'm trying to balance this and trying to balance that. There's lots of threads going on and trying to pull them all together and make sure they're happening at roughly the same time and each of the characters is getting enough airtime and all that kind of stuff. And it was hard work and it took me much longer than I thought. And then you've just got to stick at it. It's basically the only piece of advice I can give you with Metal Reads is stick at it. It will eventually come good, but it may take some time. And I think the difference between writers who come up with a quality product multiple times over is that you've just got to stick at it. There's no real way around it other than saying to yourself, no, I'm going to get up this morning, I'm going to try and sort another chapter out. And it sometimes it is like pulling tooth. Okay, sometimes it is like pulling tooth. I really don't want to do this anymore. And you've got to get through those periods to get back to the good stuff. I think. Just stick at it. Nim Duskrin, what would you have done if there was already an author writing with the name Drew Wager? And how would you have picked a pen name? That's a good question, actually. I sometimes regret not having picked a pen name, actually. I don't know what pen name I would have chosen, but sometimes it is useful to separate your writing persona from your actual person. Now, I'm not very imaginative when it comes to names for myself. So, I don't know. Maybe I should have done, actually, but I haven't, so it's a bit late now. Had there been another one, then yes, if they were an established author, then I would probably have gone, yeah, I'm going to have to choose something else because otherwise they'll just think I'm me, and it must think of him as his picture. It should be he was a he, because Drew's one of those names which can be, male or female, really. I don't know. Maybe I should have chosen a pen name. That's a good topic for exploration at some point, I think. WaffleCon, an open mic night. Yes, can't buy drinks at the virtual bar. Next week, Drew will lift the green screen curtain to reveal the bar at his local with a bemused barman looking. That would be good. I could take the whole ring down to the pub and then go, haha, guys. Rob's 2610. Sorry I'm late. 2610. Must say that. 2610. Sorry I'm late. How's the waffle going tonight? What are we waffling? We're sort of generally waffling about writing, which I suppose is actually slightly on topic. But then Web Metal Reads, just plough on through. I'm so kind of doing it. Yeah. So that's the only way, I think. I mean, a lot of people say, oh, writing. I mean, interesting enough. Here's a little aside again. A lot of if you done surveys of people, and this has been done in the past, of what do you think the ideal job is? Loads and loads of people go, I'd love to write. I'd love to go and write a book. That would be the perfect job. And when you query them about it, they go, yeah, well, all you do is you find yourself a nice cottage in the country, with a nice summery spring-like view out the window, and you get your old typewriter and you sit in the window and you just type away, and the words come, and the birds flit past the window, and somebody brings you a cup of tea, and isn't it idyllic? And then you win a publishing contract, and boom, everything's beautiful. In your dreams, my son. Now, I'm very fortunate in my house, but I do get tea delivered to me on regular schedules, which is extremely handy. I have a very nice wife who does that regularly for me, and I make her coffee by compensation. So it's a quid pro quo. But writing is nothing like that at all. Okay, nothing like that at all. There's an awful lot of swearing, there's an awful lot of heartache, and there's an awful lot of why am I doing this? This is a complete waste of time that you have to work through. So if you're looking at it to pay the bills, I wouldn't recommend it. If you're looking at it as a quick route to fame and fortune, again, I wouldn't recommend it. You've got to be a special sort of nutter. Just for my international audience, that's a strange person, okay? A nutter is a very British way of picking. You have to be a very strange sort of person in order to want to write a book. So you're basically spending an awful lot of time typing some text nowadays into a computer, of course, and the amount. Let me tell you. Okay, how much time have I spent writing Doom Dark's Revenge? Let me just go and look it up because the word processor will tell me. Okay, so That's just the total editing time of the current version. Okay, so it's not going to tell me. But, okay, well, I can probably make an educated guess. But it's going to be several hundred hours, okay? Hundreds and hundreds of hours to write a book. You can earn a lot more money with a few hundred hours than writing books. Just no matter what you do, okay? Even if you just go and stack shelves at your local supermarket, you'll probably get paid more than you will for spending all that time writing books. You've got to ask yourself, why am I doing this? You know, this is insane. Why am I doing this? It's because you want to. So there we go. Okay, we're just just going to catch up with the chat. Albano the Wicked says, are there rules for choosing a pen name the same as what porn stars use? I have no idea. I don't actually know any porn stars. When I know one, I will ask. With my current work in progress, I'm trying to add a whole other character into every scene. That is like pulling teeth, especially when that character was dead before. When they're dead. Okay, well, that sounds quite hard. Grizz Viking, it's like a woodshop when we were kids. You make something, you sandpaper it, you ask the teacher if it's good enough, he says no, you keep polishing, you ask again, he says no. I polish some more, and eventually, yeah, that's good. That is it, to be honest. At least that's the way it works for me. I can't write well enough to start with that I can just go type the thing in, boom, there you go, it's perfect. I just can't do it. And I don't think many writers can. There's, you know, and many of, you know, I've got an entire YouTube playlist on things that you need to do as you're looking at your rough draft, things that you should consider, because there's so much you need to consider as a writer. You know, you've got to do tense, you've got to do perspective, you've got to do narrative voice, you've got to do pacing, you've got to do dialogue, you've got to do tenses, you've got to do perspective, you've got to do points of view, you've got to do, you know, all those sort of things, and then you've also got to be able to write an interesting story that kind of all makes sense. All those things are aspects of the craft of writing which you can't just go, today I shall be a brilliant author. You just can't do it, I'm afraid. You've got to start off as an inexperienced person and get more experience, because it's just like anything. It's like, I can't say, today I will be a brilliant violinist. I've even bought a violin, you know. It's just, I won't be a brilliant violinist. I just, even if I wanted to be one, you know, it's going to take me several years of practice to get better at it. Even if I've got some talent, which I haven't, by the way, for playing violin, even if you've got some talent, there's no way around having to practice and having to craft and having to get better in order to get to a point where you're acceptably good enough to do that sort of thing. You can't. You've got to start somewhere, and then you've got to craft and put in the hard work in order to get better. So there we go. So Lee74, word has it the Druids found a murderous solution to the original soon-to-be-published author Drew Wager. I'm not going to live that one down, am I? Warning: Drew has digressed from waffle for an aside. Yes, so we've gone peak waffle. I've gone past that. Now I'm on an aside. Lenslark, hi Drew in chat. John, the first word is here is book. How difficult? I know, very predictable for a writing stream, isn't it? Osland says looking for a dream job, it would be a space trucker rather than a regular trucker. Let's go with that. I often wonder how that's a good one. Web Metal reads. I often wonder how authors can pump out novel after novel in a lengthy series. Well, my approach, and I've said this before on the stream, my approach on that has always been to plan the entire thing. Okay, so for my 4-book story that I was talking about at the beginning of the stream, I planned it out from beginning to end. So I knew the entirety of the story at a high level before I started writing the first book. And I originally thought it was going to be 5 books, and then I thought, actually no, the third book nothing really is happening in the third book then, so I'm going to squash it into 4 books. For which I did get a couple of reviews saying it was a little bit rushed in places, so maybe I could have made it 5 books, but I was happy with 4, and that's how it ended up. Now that's me. I've had to plan things out. Partly I find it helps me write a more complicated plot if I've worked out all the plot holes, and B, then I can kind of write a bit more metronomically, so I know roughly how long each thing's going to be, and then therefore I can do it all. So that's how I do it. That doesn't work for everybody. So there we go. When you find the answer, please pass it on to George R.R. Martin. Yeah, see, he hasn't finished yet, has he? Even though slightly curiously, the the TV series that was based on his books finished before he finished writing the books. That's really funny. I don't know about that, but and sometimes a series of books, some people do follow a thing. I mean, the old Mills and Boon sort of stuff. It's smouldering looks, ripped bodices, dark and dashing stranger. Just chuck all the elements in and move the scenery around a bit. You can do that again and again and again and again, and that's if that's your thing, that's fine. I mean, those sort of books have been rated. I mean, Clive Cussler, bless him. With his hero Dirk Pitt. Now, I read one of those and quite enjoyed it, and I read the second one. I thought I've read this story before. It's just the submarine is now an airplane. And the shady Russian guy is now a shady, shady Chinese gentleman. And I thought, okay, so I know what he's doing. He basically just recycles the plots again and again and again, changes some of the technical details. And again, that's fine if you enjoy that and you know what you're getting. And you're satisfied with that, then that's great. I mean, the Da Vinci Code. I mean, I loved the first one. I quite enjoyed that. The second one, I thought it's the same story. Same things happening, and so I don't want to do that. That's not what I do. But I'm not aiming to be a novelist who just punches out something similar for the bestseller list. That's I don't know Clive Cussler at all. I'm sure he's a jolly nice chap, but he's got at least he has. I mean, he's been doing it for years. He's got that's his living. He makes novels in that sort of sense. That's not the sort of motivation that I had when writing stories, and that your motivation will be different. GR1988, I can't plan out the entire thing in detail. So much changes, and the changes compounded to other changes like a butterfly effect. And this is again. I mean, what I'm talking about here is how I do it. So don't let that influence, and don't let that be the right answer, because it isn't. There's lots and lots of ways to write a successful novel and series and book and various other bits and pieces. My way is the one that I've adopted that works for me, but it may not work for you, so it's not right, it's just a way, okay? So bear that in mind. So webmaster reviews, always starting out with a good timeline roadmap is good advice. I also understand using basic formula as well, but who is sticking in my head is someone like Terry Brooks or Piers Anthony. They have like 3 series running with 20 novels, and I wonder if it's like a team. I don't know. I mean, that's a lot of books, isn't it? I mean, my books tend to be longer as well, because it tends to take me a while to get everything sorted out. Terry Brooks. I mean, Terry Brooks. I mean, that's a good point actually. His are very long, aren't they? So I'm thinking, sort of Shannara, Elfstones of Shannara, and the XYZ of Shannara. The thing of Shannara, the other thing of Shannara. Quite enjoyed those again, and they do kind of hook onto each other. Whether they were planned, it's difficult to say. I don't know about that. Good evening, Drew, says Digital Hardware. Good evening. Would you let a tab network use your work, Drew, i.e. Netflix, Amazon, what to... We talked about this. This is an interesting one, isn't it? Because on one hand, I would go, yes, turn my thing into a TV series, I shall be famous, and it will be on the telly. Wouldn't that be awesome? So there's definitely part of me that would go, yes, I'd love to see Shadewood as a TV series or a film. There's part of me then that would go, okay, well, what are we talking about here? I mean, are we saying Drew, you give us Shadewood, we'll make a TV series and give you lots of money, but you're not allowed to be involved, which would be one way it could happen. Then there's the sort of alternative. Okay, Drew, you want to be involved, do you? Great. But you can't have as much money because you're going to be an executive producer on the thing. And one of the things I've observed with TV versions of good books is sometimes they work and sometimes they really don't. And sometimes that's because the original writer was involved, and sometimes it's because the original writer was kept away from the TV. And so I don't know whether or not Shadewood would work as a TV series, and I also don't know whether or not me being involved with any potential production of a TV series of my stuff would be a good thing or not. So, because I know absolutely nothing about television in terms of how to make a good TV show, so that one is a difficult one. I think I'd like to see it done, and I'd probably like to be involved. But whether or not that would actually be a successful thing to do, I'm not sure. So there we go. Apologies for bad grammar on road. Don't worry about that. My grammar and spelling is terrible most of the time. That's why I have an editor. So good. Have I ever considered writing movie scripts? No, I haven't. I've never tried it. I don't know much about it. How different are they to novels? Very different from what I can see, and that's just kind of like a cursory view. So I've never tried it. I don't know what I would do with one, to be honest. I haven't got anybody to pitch a movie script to. So I've always been a storyteller first and foremost. I like writing, and books are kind of the lowest common denominator way of putting that sort of together. So that's a good one. Have you ever read The Writer's Journey? If so, what did you think? I haven't actually. I shall stick that on my list of things to read. Thank you for that. By the way, I'm Theo, sometimes commented on your awesome NMS. Thank you very much. Good to see you from there. They butchered the actual story. Okay, I think it would be better done in animation because then all the scenes could be. Now you see, this is something that does interest me as technology improves. Now I don't know if it will improve fast enough for me to be able to do this with my stuff, but at some point in the future, surely it's going to be possible to basically say to some sort of animation package on your PC, create these 3 characters and animate them walking down this landscape. And once computers can get to that level of sophistication, I could see myself making my own animated stories. I think I'd quite enjoy that. Right now, I haven't got the technology to do anything like that. I can make static screenshots, but I can't animate them because I haven't got the skill and I haven't got the people all the time or the money to do that. But maybe technology will improve to the point where that could be something that a person like me working on their own, it might be within their reach. I don't know. That would be quite an interesting place to see. Does everyone have a good example of a book that went to a movie that worked well? I always end up feeling a bit disappointed when going from a book to watching on screen. I think this is the thing. I mean, one of the things that I've noticed is that when you change the medium in which the story is being told, you change the story. I was quite surprised by this because, years and years and years ago, before I wrote my, some of my novels, I had no idea about audiobooks. I vaguely remembered audiobooks as a child on cassette, right? Things that you kind of listened to before you went to bed. But I hadn't really given any thought in regard to anything that I'd done until I went to one of the elite conventions, and they basically said, "Oh, this book you're writing, you are bringing it out on Audible, aren't you?" And I was like, "What's that then?" They were, "Well, like audio. It's like, there's going to be an audio version, right?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah, we'll do that, definitely, yeah." And then I went away and thought about it. Okay, well, we could turn it into an audiobook. And as it turned out, we did it into a kind of, we got a professional voice actor in, and we had sound effects from the game and all sorts of stuff to make it a little bit more interesting than it otherwise would have been. But listening to that audiobook of my book was an interesting experience for me, because when I listened to the audiobook, and it was a plain narration, it wasn't abridged, it wasn't changed, but it did have special effects in it and a bit of music and things like that. It was a very different experience to me listening to it than reading it as a book, and I'm the author. It felt like a different story because it was in audiobook form as opposed to paperback stroke ebook. And as a result of that, when you translate something into TV and film, no matter what you start with, you're telling a different story. And a lot of the time when you look at the needs of television and the needs of film, so for example, a film, a long film will be, a film starts at about an hour and a half, a long film will be 2 hours plus, and an epic is about 3 hours, okay? And that's as long as a film can be. It can't be any longer than that, unless you're going to break it up into multiple films. A TV series has to be broken up into a certain number of episodes, and to be viable for a network to pick it up has to be of a certain length so they can chuck advert breaks into it, all those sort of structural things. And the moment you start having to contrive a story so that it can accommodate episodic viewing, or the length of a film, or the needs of advertising within the structure of the story, you're changing the story. And I think that's inevitable when you make a TV or a film adaptation of a book, that you're going to change the story. You can't not change the story. Sometimes you have to simplify the plot. Sometimes you have to remove some of the peripheral characters, or maybe double them up and make two people into one person for the sake of the story, in order to get it to fit within the confines of television and film. So all of those things, I think, are elements to conversion. So when books are converted to TV and film, they're not going to be the same. They can't be the same. They can't be a pure translation. It's just not possible. And then they, of course, are faced with, okay, well, if I've already read the book and they don't do it the way I would have done it, then it's not very good. And that happens to me quite a lot when I watch a film of a book. Whereas if you watch a film that's just a film, then you can basically judge it on its own merits. If you're comparing it to the book, I don't think a film can ever be as good as the book, because in the book your imagination can take flight entirely. So there. So I don't know, like the holodeck. Yeah, I mean, I'd love a holodeck. The only problem with the holodeck is, of course, if we're honest with each other, none of us would ever come out again, would we? So a movie which worked well. How about Matilda? I mean, that's a good one. Yes. You sure the Unity or Unreal can be set up like that? So yeah. So I must admit, I haven't really taken a good long hard look at Unity or Unreal, but they still look a bit too technical for me. And I'm not a computer programmer, so will I be able to do what I want to be able to do in a reasonable amount of time in those sort of products? Possibly. Learning curve and time, etc. I don't know. So we'll have to wait and see. So Chris Viking, that's exactly what I want to be able to do. I need a human about 45 years of age, long brown hair, 175 centimetres in height. Make one, and I'll say, no, hair longer, hair darker, taller, give them a stoop, give them I want to be able to do that sort of thing. And we're not there yet. That would be quite cool. Web Metal Reads, were you a narrator? I was for my Shadewood books, not for the Elite one. And so I'm doing the narration of my own books for the Shadewood stuff. So I'll probably do more of that in the future as well, because I quite like it. I quite enjoy that whole piece. Glenn, I was looking at Audible today since your Shadewood books are out now, and I feel old. I've never bought an audiobook and wondered if it's accessible only by subscription or if I download it and keep it forever. I must admit, I don't know how it works. I think you can download it, but maybe somebody can chime in on how does Audible actually work. Rob's 2610. I was skeptical about audiobooks, but having tried it, it's cool to listen to it while walking my dogs. Now, this is the thing. I mean, from a practical perspective. Okay, let's just talk about monies for a moment in terms of writing. One of the things I've noticed a lot over the last 10 years. So when I started doing this properly 10 years ago, it was all paperbacks, right? Everybody wanted a paperback book, and ebooks were a bit kind of like, ooh, well. If I have to, I'll have an ebook, but I'd much rather have a paperback. And audiobooks were like nowhere as far as I could tell. I hadn't even heard of them. I didn't know they were a thing. Over the last 10 years, that's entirely turned around. And I'm just looking literally for my own revenue statement. So the amount of money I get paid for sales of my stuff. 45% of my revenue comes from ebooks. Okay, so that's Kindles and Nooks and phones. 10% comes from paperbacks. Okay, only 10% comes from paperbacks. The other 45% is audio. Okay, so audio and electronic versions of my stuff, and this again, it's only me, so it may not apply to lots of other things, but 90% of my revenue, i.e. the money I make from my writing, comes from digital stuff, either in audio or electronic form. Paperbacks are nice to have, as far as I'm concerned, and I still want to have a paperback version of all my stuff, but the vast majority of what I actually sell to the public is electronic. That's just a fact, okay? And that's me as an author. I don't know if that's representative of lots of other people, but that's what happens. That's what I see in my own sales. So there we go. And that's changed over the years. Audiobooks are getting more and more popular, and I think that's a demographic shift. I think younger folks like to listen to books on the move, or whilst they're doing something else, while they're exercising, walking, commuting, hanging around other places. I don't know. That's what I'm seeing. And I think the rise of the mobile phone as a multimedia device has changed that dramatically since the original iPhone back in 2007. you can store dozens and dozens of books on your phone in Audible form nowadays, and you can also stream it from the internet and all those kind of good things, and that just seems to be where it's going. So I'm taking that as seriously as I can, and I'm committing to make sure all of my books are on audio format. It's a lot of hard work to make an audiobook, but there we are. So there we go. Rob's 2610 says I was sceptical, but quite enjoy them. The last digital hardware, the last movie I watched with an interval was Dances with Wolves. I was gutted they stopped about it. So yeah, intervals where they used to come around with ice creams. Web Metal reads, it's probably better to write for TV. I suspect it probably would be. Now, I've never tried that. And there are plenty of famous books that get converted to television. I mean, the one that I watched recently was, of course, His Dark Materials by Philip Pullman. Now, I wasn't a particular fan of his books, and I wasn't a particular fan of the TV, because I felt the TV actually had the same flaws as his books had. But that's just me. I'm not a particular Philip Pullman fan. I think he's a bit overrated personally, and that is an entirely personal view. If you like him, then that's fine. But the same issues I felt were present in both mediums in that case. Rob's 2010, not sci-fi related, but I'm glad I watched Hunt for Red October before I read the book. I'll be very disappointed. That's interesting. Okay, so who's Hunt by Red October actually by? Who wrote that? I can't remember. I should know. I've read it. But the trouble is, you've got you had Sean Connery in there, didn't you? Which was he lifts any movie. Commander O'Connor. Okay, speaking from experience, so this is quite good. Commander O'Connor's here, and I definitely won't say anything about Alexa because Commander O'Connor's here. Speaking from experience here as a cameraman, the narrative for a TV film has to change not only for the time constraints but also for visuals. The worst thing that can happen on a film set is the writer of the Dead Tree version to be on set. See, that I think is a very honest and very true. That rings so true to me. The worst thing that can happen on a film set is the writer of the Dead Tree version to be on set. And I'm pretty sure, if I'm honest, that I would be exactly the writer that Connor hates. I'd be going, no, there's no tree there. No, it doesn't look like that at all. What are they doing? That's not how they're supposed to be. I can imagine I would be very irritating. So I think, if somebody comes up to me tomorrow and says, right, Drew, Shadewood, we'd like to buy the film rights. I don't know. What would I do? Because if I'm not involved in any creative capacity, then I've got no say over how the thing gets created, and it might be dreadful. But on the flip side, as Commander O'Connor is pointing out, if I am involved, it might be dreadful because I keep fiddling with it and it never happens. So I don't know. That's a really difficult one. I really don't know. So there we go. Wintermute, streaming services mean TV episodes can be any length and aren't reliant on ad breaks. That's very true, actually. So that has changed a bit more recently, hasn't it? But I suppose there's still, I don't know, I don't know enough about TV production. I suppose there's still a comfort level. I know you can pause and stop and restart, obviously, on streaming. So that has changed things as well. And maybe they're more interested in a steady stream of, relatively famous brand stuff at one end, and then they can also afford to do other stuff at the other end. I don't know. Do you have to be a very well-known writer in a traditional format for something like Netflix to take a punt on turning your thing into a TV series? There is original stuff on those streaming services which is less well known, so I don't know enough about it. It's not something I've really gone out and thought to myself, right, I'm going to really try and pitch to Netflix or Amazon or something like that. I just haven't done that. To be honest, I wouldn't know where to start. So I'm just writing stories, and it's fairly unlikely that I'll ever get picked up for television. You never know, but it's not something I've personally given a lot of serious consideration to. So maybe I should. Maybe I need to do some research. Glenn, a story created as a movie at first and then a novel written to go with it does come out very shallow for a book story. So yeah, book conversions of films generally I don't find very good. So I'm not sure. I want a holodeck. Yes, I do definitely want a holodeck. So yeah, they're all tricky. They're all tricky. You can buy them individually, but it works out better to subscribe for a month and get it with your credit, and then cancel if you don't want to carry on getting a book a month. Oh, so that's the Audible question. Sorry, I really enjoy them for my commute. Says Dan Tech. Okay, so Dan Technic. So yeah, so that's kind of the way Amazon works, I suppose. It's like a subscription thing. And ebooks were great when I was a truck driver. Maybe that doesn't work too well because Medium should just stay with it. I don't think there's anything intrinsically wrong. Now, for example, I mean, one example where I would give a very, very positive, hearty recommendation, in general, I mean, there's a few exceptions, but in general is, the films of Lord of the Rings back in the early 2000s. I went into those incredibly sceptical. I say they'll never pull this off. They'll never pull this off. You can't film the Lord of the Rings. It just isn't doable. They've tried in the past. They did that sort of animated version, and that was not very good. I thought it won't work. I love the Lord of the Rings. I know it inside out. It's just unfilmable. And I came out of Fellowship of the Ring, the first Tolkien, the first film, thinking, damn, that was good. I thought, I was looking at it thinking they really exceeded my expectations on what they did with that film. I came out of it thinking, actually, to be honest, I can't, having just watched it, I couldn't think of anything obvious that jumped out to me as going, I'd have done that a different way and made it better. I was thinking, no, they nailed that. They nailed the atmosphere, they nailed the music, they nailed the characterization. It felt right. It felt good. It felt like the book in my head as I was kind of reading it. I felt it was a quality product and done really, really well. And yes, there was a few things about the plot that got changed with the elven ladies and the elves turning up at Helm's Deep later on, all that kind of stuff. But I understand the reasons they did that. And I felt that they were pretty solid products for Lord of the Rings. I didn't like the Hobbit ones, but I did like the Lord of the Rings ones. So that there are examples of that where that can happen, and I was genuinely impressed by them. It was Tom Clancy. I was just caught up with Hunt for Red October. Sorry, I'm a bit far back on the chat now. And apologies, this is peak waffle, isn't it? I did have a topic for this evening, but we'll maybe just go round to that next week because that's sometimes the way these things work. This is this is a very free form stream, and sometimes I just go with the chat, which is fun. So never mind. Commander O'Connor says, sorry but true, writers are a pain in the rear end. So that to me is very good sage counsel, actually. As I can imagine that I probably would be a pain in the butt, okay, if I was in that situation. I wouldn't mind being consulted for some feedback, and what I'd actually be interested in, Commander O'Connor, there is not necessarily any of your productions, because I think that would be way too intrusive, but I'd like to be able to earwig in on somebody else's production where there was a writer involved and just see the dynamics, okay, where it is appropriate for a writer to volunteer some opinions. And maybe it's a case of just hanging back unless you're asked, and maybe you never would be asked, I don't know, but I can see how a writer butting in every so often would really irritate the filming and production schedule, because they'd never be satisfied. And I think that's the trick, is that the interpretation of a story in a different medium, you kind of got to leave it to the people who know that medium. There's got to be a level of trust there, surely. So I don't know. Foundation Trilogy is on Apple TV. So I haven't got Apple TV right now. That's one I do want to go and get. So I'll have to have a think about whether or not I can sign up to Apple for a bit and watch that one. So that's another thing. Isn't the Expanse TV show being made by the authors just an exception? So I don't actually, Grumpy Ethelyn, that's a good question. So the Expanse is written by it's S.A. Corey that's not a real person. That's the sort of conjoined name of the two authors, and I don't know how much input they had into the TV series. So that's a good one. Lens Lark says Lord of the Rings was so good. The Battle of the Trees, can't remember what they're called, was exactly as I'd imagined. Yeah, so there are many scenes in Lord of the Rings when I thought that's exactly how I saw it. In fact, actually, in some places that's better than how I saw it. I remember when they were walking through the mines of Moria, and they had that moment where they sort of panned backwards, and the immensity of the dwarven cavern was unleashed. And there's a stirring bit of music, and I just remember the hairs rising up on my neck, thinking, "Yeah, that's better than what I had." And there were quite a few moments like that in Lord of the Rings where I just thought they've just nailed the atmosphere of Tolkien, and I thought they'd just done a really, really good job. Agree, but movies like that are in the minority. So yeah, I think you need somebody who really cares and really understands the source material, and I think that's probably where the genius lies. In Commander O'Connor's case, I would be happy to surrender my executive powers, as it were, of a TV series or film of Shadewood, if I felt that the director or producer, whoever it is that does it, really got the material. So, in the case of Lord of the Rings, whoever was the creative director behind that really got the material, really understood what they were dealing with, and understood the necessary detail in it. I would need to have confidence that somebody like that was in charge of the production, and then I could step away from it quite happily. If I didn't have that confidence, I don't think I could let it go. I think I'd have to say thanks, but no thanks. I don't know. If they said, here's £2 million, I might go, yeah, you know what you want. I don't know. I haven't been faced with that particular conundrum. Extra fancy Belgian waffle today. There we go. Thank you very much. The Ents. Yes, the Ents. We shall talk on this later. We should talk about this later on, Drew. I can certainly guide you into not being thrown off the set. That would be fantastic. I'd love to see that process happening, actually. I think that would be fascinating. Peter Jackson is a massive Lord of the Rings fan. He had been trying to get the project started for at least a decade, you see. So that's the key thing. If you've got somebody enthusiastic, if somebody came to me and said, Drew, look, I am a massive fan of Shadewood. I love it. I love this, I love that. And I was talking to them and I go, yeah, actually, they know this story just as well as I do. And they just said, I want to turn it into a TV series. Then that would be, a conversation that which could go somewhere. Whereas if I had somebody say, yeah, we would love to make a film of Shadewood, but the character Kiri, we don't want her. We only want 2 main characters. I'd have to go, you're missing the point. That's not what this story is about. Or can we set it can we set it on Earth instead of on Azurio? And go, no, you can't. Or can we have some spaceships halfway through and everything gets blown up? No, you can't do that. Yeah, that's not what Shadewood is. So somewhere in there is the art of this. Stephen, so Hobbit films is what happens when the studio mandates you have to make 3 films and you don't have the material for it. So exactly, Shadow Wyvern, you're quite on the point there. Stephen King famously hated Kubrick's version of The Shining, and then King did his own TV version, and the TV was terrible. So I certainly personally, I wouldn't know how to even start, but I wouldn't feel comfortable making a TV series of Shadewood. And I think there's a lot of little bits and pieces that immediately aren't obvious that you'd have to change. So for example, the dialogue that I write that works in a book, I don't think would translate to TV. When I watch a TV show, I'm listening to the dialogue as it's being acted by actors and thinking that's not the way it would work in a book, because a book is a different medium, and dialogue that works in a book doesn't translate directly to film or TV. So you need somebody very skillful to take your book and go, right, what's happening in this scene? Let's rewrite this dialogue that a pair of actors could actually handle and deal with, and then translate. So I think there's lots of things like that you'd have to alter from a book to TV film. And not only the pacing and the structure and all those other things, but the dialogue as well, I think has to change because of the medium it's in. Again, people with TV film experience could probably tell me more about this, but I think you have to make so many changes. It's a massive undertaking. Web Metal reads, I think having a director in a good relationship is key when writing is involved, but I don't know. Yeah, yeah, interesting conversation. The money greed setting in and forcing what does. Yeah, so the trouble is the moment money gets involved and you're having to make a profit, and then there's kind of pound signs and stuff like that, that's when the purity of the thing can get all upset. So that's difficult. Nim Joshua says, on Netflix you seem to have to work with an agent that already works with them, but I couldn't see a list of agents that do. So the barriers to entry on those sort of things are probably quite high. You need to know who you need to know, and that's a difficult thing to go through. Aren't they making a Lord of the Rings show? Yes, that's supposedly coming this time next year. In fact, I think it's September 2020 is the second age of Lord of the Rings is going to be turned into, I think it's a TV series, isn't it? So Mecha Giuliotto, yeah. Fingers crossed, but who knows, right? It's Amazon, yeah, Amazon are doing that one. Silmarillion, that's right. So, yeah, kind of like, yay, and kind of like, no, you know. Wintermute, The Expanse authors are executive producers of a TV show and are very hands-on in the writer's room. So, and that's interesting. Now, having watched The Expanse, the first season I thought was not great, actually. And I thought a lot of the problems with The Expanse season 1 were actually production values, i.e. the characters were mumbling a lot. I couldn't make out what they were saying a lot of the time. I had to really concentrate hard, and that's not very relaxing way of watching television. I had to concentrate, really had to try and figure out what the hell they were saying. And their motivations and their behaviours didn't seem to me to be very clear a lot of the time. And then it got into its stride in seasons 2 and 3, and it was proper good edge of the seat, proper space opera sci-fi stuff, and I was like, yes, this is good, I'm enjoying this. And it ended on a sort of high point for me at season 3, and no spoilers if you haven't watched it, but season 4 then kicked off with kind of like this amazing kind of Brave New World thing that we can go and explore, and then it just went boring from my perspective. I just said, well, why is the pacing gone completely from this story? It's just, I just literally fell asleep in season 4, didn't enjoy it at all, and gave up, which was a terrible disappointment for me, having enjoyed seasons 2 and 3 so much. And I don't know, so I mean, other people's opinions were different, but season 1, meh. Seasons 2 and 3, absolutely spot on, fantastic. Season 4, just yawn city as far as I was concerned. Didn't enjoy it at all. So I haven't got to the end of season 4 of The Expanse because I literally just I don't care anymore. I've just lost interest. So there we go. I think as soon as Christopher Tolkien passed, the successive heirs sold the Silmarillion rights. Okay, so it's a passing of the torch there, isn't it? What about directing your own movie based on one of your books, making sure it stays true to your vision? So Adrian Eon 31, the thing that concerns me about that whole thing is I don't know anything about that process. So, it's basically like saying, Drew, why don't you conduct an orchestra based on your Shadewood books? It's like, well, I don't know how to conduct an orchestra. I've got an ear for music in the sense, people say, well, you can play the piano. So, well, yes, but I don't know how to conduct an orchestra. I wouldn't know where to start. I mean, I could tell you whether or not it sounded good, and it wouldn't if I was running it. So I don't have the skills. I know I don't have the skills to direct a movie. I don't know what's involved. I wouldn't even know where to start. So, I couldn't approach that easily myself. Can we make so that Muru doesn't suffer constantly? Drew says no. Gonna have to judge whether or not that's still the case in book 4. That would be great, but then you get burned on the newest He-Man and thinking that was what his name shared this. Yeah. Kenny Baglar, you can see some of the animated Lord of the Rings film scenes being recreated in Drax. Yeah, there are a few homages in there. I did spot those. That is quite good. Web Metal Reads, I felt the same way with the Shannara series. Now that was interesting. I watched the Shannara series thinking, oh, it's the Sword of Shannara. This is excellent. And started watching the series and I thought, hang on, that's not how the story. What's going on here? And they didn't use the first book. They started with the second book, the Elfstones of Shannara, and they sort of started with that. And I was like, oh, okay, I've tuned in now. What's going on? And then the story of the Elfstones of Shannara wasn't what happened in the book at all in the TV series. It was sort of similar, with some of the same characters appearing, but the overall tone of the Shannara TV series to me was nothing like the books. Whereas the books were sort of deep, magical, set in a post-apocalyptic kind of scenario, but much more about magic and much more about things like that. The TV series came across as much more post-apocalyptic and recently post-apocalyptic than I felt the books did. So I don't know what Terry Brooks thought of the TV adaptation of Shannara, but it was not a very close. It certainly wasn't right. Let's film the book. It just wasn't. It was some of the names are the same, and that was most of the similarities. I think I quite enjoyed it, but it wasn't Shannara to me. It just was kind of using the same name. So it was odd that production. I don't know what Terry Brooks thought of it, or how much he was involved with it. I'm not sure. Have I had any thoughts on the reboot of Babylon 5? I haven't seen anything to comment on yet. So, in general terms, I think I mentioned on it before, I don't like reboots. I'd rather people wrote an original story and start with something new, rather than trying to kind of hang off past glories. But it can be done well. I've sort of enjoyed the reboots of Star Trek, but I wish they'd started with a different premise. I quite enjoyed the reboot of Battlestar Galactica, but I have such a soft spot for the original Battlestar Galactica. I still feel the new one detracts from that a bit, but I kind of understand why people want to get back there. So no, I don't generally like reboots. I will watch them as kind of, it's good fun and I kind of know roughly what I'm going to get, but I'd rather people spend some time with original stories, because you're kind of still trading on the name a bit for brand recognition, and I don't like that because it smacks of money. Could I not understand what they were saying because of the accents, the Belter dialect? No, I tuned into the Belter dialect fine, but it was more the audio level for me. Maybe I had a dodgy electronic copy or something, but the actual voices were just too low against the ambient noise. And that's something I'm noticing more as I'm getting older. There's quite a lot of TV shows where the background music just isn't the background anymore, or the special effects are just not the background, and the guys are kind of having a conversation in front of computers that are beeping, or music that's playing, or the ambient music, whatever it happens to be, to set the scene. It's just too loud in comparison to the actors' voices. The mix is wrong, and I don't know if that's because it's being prepped for different types of audio technology and stuff. But I quite often find that on TV programs nowadays, is there's just too much noise in the background, either music or special effects, and you can't hear what the actors are saying. And they definitely felt like they got that wrong in the season 1 of The Expanse. It took me ages to, what's he saying? I can't hear what he's saying. Speak up, man. So I don't know. Drew, what's the best sci-fi show ever? How can I answer that one? That's impossible to answer. Different things for different reasons, I think. I would give a vote for Firefly. I did enjoy Firefly immensely. I thought the dialogue was very witty. I really enjoyed that. I'm a massive fan of the original Star Trek, simply because it's the first sci-fi series I ever remember watching, so it's unassailable in my list of science fiction shows. I love the original Battlestar Galactica as well. I just like the camaraderie of a bunch of humans working together under an existential threat and trying to find Earth in the across the universe. All of those sort of early 70s and 80s shows I loved, and in retrospect they aren't brilliant, but they're in my brain as a lovely, nostalgic, warm, fuzzy sort of feeling, so I can't criticise them now, because they're part of my childhood. So all of those things I love. Buck Rogers as well. Blake Seven. They're terribly ropey when you watch them now, but they have greatness in them at some level. So what's the best one? I have no idea. What do you mean by best? I'll put cartoons like Ulysses 31 up there as potential candidates for best. I love that show. As a young teenager, all those sort of things. Those things, very, very formative sci-fi experiences for me. Blake Seven, Battlestar Galactica, Space 1999, Buck Rogers, Star Trek, all of those things, all great as far as I'm concerned. You know, and there was I suppose looking at the 70s and 80s stuff, and obviously late 60s in the terms of Star Trek, things were a lot more optimistic then. I mean, yes, there were space battles, right, and people got blown up and stuff, but the general tone of the shows was much more optimistic. And yes, despite the ridiculous odds that we're fighting against, there's a good chuckle at the end of the show, all that sort of stuff, ha 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 ha. And the original Starbuck from Battlestar Galactica is kind of the rogue you want to be friends with, and Han Solo from Star Wars, kind of lovable rogue type stuff. Whereas modern sci-fi is much darker, and the characters, I suppose, are more gritty and realistic, but they're far less likable. And they do nasty, horrible things, and it's just generally less optimistic. It's grittier, it's darker. Maybe it's more real, but it's less optimistic. And I miss that optimism, I think, that was around in the 70s and 80s. Buffo, so what's the best sci-fi show ever? I have no idea. I know which ones I like. ED Elite Dangerous does have enough lore and room to have a Netflix series like The Expanse. Yeah, you could easily make an Elite movie or an Elite TV series. That would be not a doddle, but it would be certainly doable. Commander O'Connor, a book. There's a bit of a paragraph here. A book has one creative. TV or film have many. The director of photography, the actors, the set designer, costume makeup, the sound master. Each have their own ideas as to how a text will look. It's a balancing act all the time. My position: I just do what I'm told by the DOP. Director of photography, just adding my own flair to their wishes. Yeah, see, I like the idea of a collective team working on it if they're working in harmony. That makes a lot of sense. But like you say, I am a bit of a control freak, so I don't think I'd work very well in that scenario. Gamma Burn, I've not watched the TV show, but your review matches my experience of reading the Expanse books. So I admission, I haven't read the Expanse books. I should. Because I usually have a rule that I read the book before I watch the TV version, but I didn't in the case of Expanse. It just happened to be on, and we watched it. There's things I did love out of it. I loved the realistic physics. I thought, at last, a TV show that's not mucking about with the rules of physics. And then the alien stuff came along and did, but no spoilers. But you know what I mean. There were some good nods to proper physics in it, which I did enjoy. So that's quite good. When is Drew making a progressive rock opera based on Shadewood? Yeah, Shadewood, the Jeff Wayne version. That would be cool. Bum, bum, bum. That would go fun. Strangely, Commander O'Connor's actually given me a lovely compliment. Thank you. Strange enough, you would make a very good director because you know your limitations. Okay, well that's good. So I'd have to delegate to people who actually knew what they were doing, which would be pretty much everything, I think. So that's quite interesting. Okay, Warner Brothers own the rights to Babylon 5, so it goes where they say it goes. Yeah. So, and Jalen, I think, said he quite enjoyed the Shannara Chronicles. Okay, that's it. I mean, I did, but it wasn't Shannara to me. So, Webmaster Reads, yes, the story wasn't like anything like the novels, but it just followed a vaguely similar timeline, but the magic was just not there. It felt like a post-apocalyptic story with elves in it. Because they would spend a lot of the time running through the ruins of our civilization in the Shannara Chronicles, which is not something they did in the Shannara books. The apocalyptic stuff happens so long ago, it's ancient myth and history, whereas in the Shannara Chronicles they would come across wrecked cars and broken down fences and bridges and traffic signs and things like that, which certainly when I read the Shannara books was it was thousands of years ago, and it would have all rotted away, and it was just vague myth and legend. So they did make some very interesting creative choices there. I'm still waiting for the next season of The Witcher. That was nothing like I haven't watched that either, so there's another thing that's on my list of things to do. Webmaster Research, even the camera shots are also a bit based off the operator taking a book to film must be a nightmare. I saw the new Battlestar Galactica. Is it worth for me to see the old first one? Well, Dragonite, that's a very difficult one. Now, the original Battlestar Galactica is a product of its time. It was made in the late 70s, alongside the original Star Wars. So a lot of it, you'll go, it's very cheesy by modern standards. Very cheesy indeed. Yeah, they don't quite wink at the camera, but it's not far off. Okay, but the original Battlestar Galactica does have some very nice episodes in it. Very good characters that you the kind of people, if you were stuck on a spaceship out in the middle of nowhere, they're the kind of people you want to hang around with. They are fun. They're nice people generally. Okay, they argue and they do, but they're genuinely the sort of people, I wouldn't mind hanging around with the crew of the original Battlestar Galactica. I had no problems serving on the original Battlestar Galactica. I wouldn't want to hang around on the reimagined Battlestar Galactica at all. They're not nice. Very unpleasant group of people. If you can sort of set yourself into a 1970s, 1980s frame of reference, I think Battlestar Galactica, the original series, hands up quite well. Skip, definitely skip Galactica 1980. Don't go there. That was awful. But the original series, yes. But you're going to have to view it through a 1970s lens in order to enjoy it, I would say. Buffalo 1996 TV shows are mixed for surround sound, but most people listen in mono. So now that's interesting because I've got a 5.1 system, so I've got the components and the front central speaker, which is supposed to be for dialogue only, from what I understand it. But some shows just don't seem to work. I don't know. Chris Viking says same here, but I'm not quite sure to what. So anyway, good stuff. New Battlestar Galactica is very loosely based on the old, but with a very different end. Had low expectations, but was blown away. So I did enjoy the new Battlestar Galactica. I thought it had some interesting twists in it. I didn't like the ending at all. It was basically, well, I mean, I don't know if people. I mean, it's quite old now. So can we go spoilers on the new Battlestar Galactica? Basically, God did it. It's like it was all a dream, kind of. It's like that was I thought a very lame way to end the show. Yeah, so I didn't like the ending, and it got very kind of metaphysical in the last few episodes, which I thought was basically the writers going, we don't know how to end this, God did it. So I didn't think it's very satisfactory. However, the original series of Battlestar Galactica never ended either. It was cancelled before they finished the ending, so it doesn't really have an ending, which is very unsatisfactory. And but the last episode isn't bad. But Buffo 1966 did love the ending with New Battlestar. So again, anything I'm saying is not verbatim, it's not the truth, it's just my opinion, so do bear that in mind. Chris Viking says, I often put English subtitles on just in case I miss something. That's not a bad call, actually. I might start doing that, particularly if the dialogue's getting hard to understand. The DOP decides what is shot, says Commander O'Connor, but the good ones are camera people from the past and make a point of asking. Okay. Stage theatre actors know how to whisper loudly, says Grumpy Ethelyn. Pure TV actors seem to struggle. So, yeah, I don't know if that's a production thing or whether it's an acting thing, but there's that definitely things. And the tendency now, even in documentaries, I mean, I was watching something today on the Disney Plus channel that we tend to watch at lunchtime just to sort of chill out. And it's called Origins, and the chap who's doing it is very excitable. Everything is epic. And everything nowadays seems to have to be epic to grab people's attentions. Did you know that mankind strove to survive the last ice age? And rather than documentaries in my age would have been, and mankind struggled to survive the last ice age, and the reason for that is because it was jolly cold and the ice came down from the north. Whereas nowadays it's all mankind fought a battle against the ice, and it was epic. And there's all this music playing in the background. Dun, 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 dun. Whereas in the olden days it was just mankind struggled to survive the ice age on account of the cold. There was no music at all. Maybe some graphics in the background. Everything nowadays is very epic and lots and lots and lots of music. And sometimes the music's like, can you just turn the music down, because I just want to hear what the guy has to say, and I can't hear him because of your epic music. just calm the music down. There's definitely a style thing now. Classic anyway. Behind the chat. Isn't Ulysses 31 a rehash of the Iliad? Yes, it is. It's basically the Odyssey, the Iliad, effectively in space with robots and blue-skinned aliens, which doesn't sound. And it was made by a French-Japanese collaboration, which doesn't sound necessarily like a great mix, but trust me, it works. Low Earth Orbit, the tone of popular media mirrors the mood of the generation. I think that's an interesting point. That very much is my perception of it. And that's why sometimes I feel a bit of a fish out of water with what I write, because I'm writing the stuff that I want to read, which kind of hasn't changed since the 80s. So a lot of people go, well, Drew writes like so-and-so from the 80s. And yeah, he probably does. So I think that's a very good observation. Glenn, do you feel your characters in Shadewood are gritty, harder than likable, fun, light-headed types of all this other? Yeah, they probably are. That's quite a shrewd observation, actually, Glenn. In the sense that yes, I've made them grittier. Probably because now I'm a bit older and I want a bit more substance to what I'm trying to write. But I hope I still capture some of that kind of camaraderie that characters had in the 70s and 80s. You know, the fact that they can joke with each other and they can have a good time. They don't always have to be at odds with each other. But I do bring some of that at odds grittiness in as well. So they can be friends, but they can also be enemies as well, and sometimes they can just not like each other much. You know, that sort of stuff. So yeah, that's a good one. All right, miles behind the chat. Here we go. The original Apatheistic says the original Battlestar series is literally the greatest show in television history. Literally, there we go. Someone has said it. There. And those old TV series did have fantastic theme tunes. I mean, theme tunes today are good, but you know, they were so. I mean, for the musicians amongst you out there, you know, the original theme tunes had were, you know, the all major fifths. You know, Star Wars, bomb 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 bomb, major fifths, right? Battlestar Galactica, bomb 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 bomb, major fifths, okay. E.T. do 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 do, major fifths, okay. It's just major fifths were the thing. Yeah, if you had a spacey theme, major fifths was the rule. It just seems to be something musically that was done. Even Buck Rogers, do 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 do. Da-dum, da-dum, da-dum. It's all major fifths. It's just a rule, okay. And then and so that seemed to be a spacing. That Airwolf isn't major fifths. Airwolf is all about clever interpretation of minor keys and all sorts of stuff in there going on. And first one was Superman. Yeah. No, Superman was dun da 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 dum, bum bum bum. Okay, major fifths again. It's just something they did. The only one I can think of that wasn't Space 1999, which had that sort of disco-y, yeah, that sort of thing. That was very disco, but that was, you know, a little bit earlier, 1975, I think. Space 1999. So my rendition of it there wasn't brilliant. So yeah. So Buffo and Apatheistic did like the ending of Battlestar Galactica. Freaky Deaky Dude didn't. Got too religious. Wintermute says the ending was the same as Hitchhikers. Yeah. So all that sort of thing. Facts aren't good enough anymore. Is Drew describing his writing process for Doom Dark's Revenge? Yeah. Still a fan of Flash Gordon. Yeah, I know. Gordon's alive. Yeah. I mean, that's just classically kind of bad, isn't it? Almost like it was setting itself up. So Gordon's alive. There goes Buffer 1966 says it anyway. Airwolf was a lovely piece of music. I mean, that one gives me the tingles whenever I hear it, even now. There's that sort of synthy bass. And unusually, actually, Airwolf, when you look at it musically, is not. I mean, most music is a 4/4 rhythm. Okay, it's basically 4 beats of 4 beats to a bar. So you 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4. Yeah, they're all kind of 1 2 3 4 type music. Whereas Airwolf wasn't. It was, I think it's in the 16th or in 12th or something, and that's quite different. But it works. It's just a really good piece of music. The UFO theme, I can't remember that off the tip. If I played it, I'm sure I'd remember it, but I can't recall it off. Low Earth Orbit says I can't handle the design of sci-fi from the disco era. Yeah, This is a bit of an acquired taste. Blake's was major fifths. Yeah, so so it's interesting. So the musical styles were very. It was quite plain in some ways. There were rules about major fifths. It just sort of, and most of that major fifth stuff comes from military music. Most military music, if you listen to stuff from the Second World War and the marching stuff, is major fifths as well. So those sort of things are quite interesting to see where they've come from. I need the synth out. I have got the synth. We'll do that in another episode. Airwolf in particular is a really, really good one. Twilight Zone, that had that sort of really high bias, that kind of thing, didn't it? That was quite good as well. So I don't know. So yeah. This is a peak waffle stream. I've been going on for almost 2 hours about this sort of stuff in general. Then, so in summary then of this stream, I suppose the medium distorts the story. Okay, so if you're wanting to do a pure storytelling, I think you need to almost pick your medium first. So if I wanted to create a TV series, I think I'd have to write a TV series. Whereas my expertise really has always been writing books or stories for books. That's what I do. And those kind of stories. And that can be inspired by films and books and TV and all sorts of things. But I think if you take a book and try and translate it into another medium, you will alter it, and you will have to alter it in order to make it work in that medium. So I think that's an interesting consideration for the kind of purity of it. A lot of people will say, the film was never as good as the book. And that's, I think, not necessarily the fault of the film or the book. I think that's the process of translating from one to the other. So I think that's something that's quite hard to avoid. The Flash Gordon, Shadow Wyman says the Flash Gordon director and producers had arguments over the film's tone. The director's argument was, as I recall, that with budgets and special effects, it would just be a bad film if he took a serious slant on it. So that's interesting. Sometimes sending yourself up is a better thing, and it's now a bit of a cult classic, isn't it? So I don't know. Most of the budget went to Queen for the music, yeah, and to be honest, the least appropriate sci-fi music you can imagine. Queen, really, isn't it? I mean, I love Queen's music, but it doesn't scream sci-fi. It really doesn't. Interesting choices there. I mean, one of my favourite science fiction movies, to be honest, is still, even after all these years, is Galaxy Quest, which of course is a complete spoof of Star Trek. That, I think, is a brilliantly put together movie. It's got good characterization. It's not prepared to send itself up. It's actually a really, really good Star Trek movie. It's probably the best Star Trek movie that was never made, in my opinion. And it feels more like Star Trek than some of the Star Trek movies do, I think, even though it's a comedy. It's fabulous. In the way it's been put together, and I also liked Spaceballs. I can watch that again, and it's just, but I know it off by heart after all these years. My kids love it as well. That is just again another Star Wars movie that was never made. Those things I think are really good. But Star Trek 11, Grabthar's hammer, yeah. The original Planet of the Apes, again, that's quite that's a very slow paced movie, and that's another thing that's changed over the years, is the pacing. Things have to move so much faster now, you don't get a chance to relax. Whereas if you watch the original, if you watch the original Planet of the Apes, it's really slow by modern standards. You're thinking, surely something's going to blow up and explode any moment soon, but it doesn't. It's really quite odd. Galaxy Quest, I mean, so many things in there. I'm thinking, yes, that's exactly what I would have put in. Sci-fi poking fun of itself is sometimes the best. One reason I like Lower Decks. I must admit, I haven't got into Lower Decks yet. I probably need to give it more of a chance. I haven't got into it yet, I haven't watched enough episodes. Spaceballs is probably the perfect film parody. I don't think it's been taught. I mean, must admit, Spaceballs. There's bits of it, particularly now. It's slightly dated, of course, now because it's got technology in it that is out of date now. I still think one of my favourite scenes is when they're trying to find out where the goodies are, and they basically get the video cassette of the film and watch it. Prepare to fast forward, prepare to fast forward, sir. Fast forwarding, sir. When's this? This is now. When was then? Back then. When is it going to be now? Soon. That's just fabulous. Dear. So, you've never seen Spaceballs? Oh, you must watch Spaceballs. Spaceballs is fabulous. To start with, you're thinking, is this any good? It takes a good quarter of an hour to get going. Spaceballs. I mean, there are some visual gags earlier on, but it takes a little while to get into its stride. Actually, when you watch it again, you notice it's like the pacing seems slightly off at the beginning. My favourite part is, who made that guy a gunner? I did, sir. He's my brother. Spaceballs 2: The Search for More Money. I'm just plain yogurt. Yeah, so I mean, Mel Brooks is a particular style of comedy, isn't he? But very, very good. And then that's another thing. Yeah, writing a comedy that looks ridiculously difficult to me. I mean, I can crack the odd joke, and I have been known to. But to write a comedy, now that looks to me like an impossible. I mean, I've got to make people laugh throughout the entire film. Really, I couldn't do that. I just don't think I could write a comedy. I wouldn't have the confidence to write something. I thought, okay, I've got to make people laugh every few pages, or chuckle at least. No, that sounds to me like a really hard thing to do. That would be way outside my comfort zone. So that is a skill as well, to write something which is funny. That sounds like a really hard thing to do. But Galaxy Quest, Spaceballs, Red Dwarf. I mean, Red Dwarf is absolutely brilliant at times. In its characterization of very serious topics, yet done for laughs. As most good comedy is, it's poking fun at things that we go, actually, I know somebody like that, or actually, that's me. It sometimes hits very, very close to home. I can't write comedy, says the man who spends most of it. Yeah, but I find myself funny. But that's not quite the same thing, is it? Comedy is extreme, I imagine. In a year, all the jokes could be out of date. Yeah, so making people laugh. Making something that actually stands up and can be looked at and go, yes, that's a good piece of comedy. That to me sounds like a very high bar to think. Yeah, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I mean, that is the sheer brilliance. I mean, I will never be able to write a sentence like this. The best line, I think, in literature ever. I mean, I would put this on top of Shakespeare and top of Tolkien and top of all the other greats. The Vogons spaceships hung in the sky exactly the same way that bricks don't. I mean, it's just genius. It's just, everybody goes, yeah, it's funny. That's just sheer unadulterated genius as far as I'm concerned, that line. Drew, please add a general channel on Discord, not specifically. Yeah, I've got one on there. It's called Writing. Yeah, you should find it on the Discord. And I think I've still got, there's the Discord, though I've still got it in the thing. There is a writing channel, so we can all chat about writing stuff in there. It's under the sort of general category, I think. So Hitchhiker's Guide. I mean, Douglas Adams just proving that God doesn't exist, and infinite improbability drive. Just so many good moments. 2 to the power of 35,000 to 1 against stand, falling, all that sort of stuff. It's just that is just brilliant as far as I'm concerned. It's just chucklesome even now thinking about it. But I couldn't write that. I couldn't write anything approaching the grandeur and funny and cleverness of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. That's just not me. That's not what I do. So there we go. Where's your towel? Yes, it's like, why is that funny? Do you know where your towel is? And it's just brilliant. Why would a towel be at all relevant to a spaceship? But it is. It's important. Do you know? Don't panic. Just don't panic. Mostly harmless. Oh no, not again. That was just, it's like, yeah. So the spaceship sends out its improbability field, turns 2 missiles into a bowl of petunias and a rather surprised looking whale. It's just like, what was he on? Stick to my Vogon poetry. Oh, Freddled, Grunt, Buttley, etc. Yes. I know, so there we go. So what have we learnt after today's stream? Well, we've learned that Facebook has gone wrong. And I think the lesson from today's stream is that the medium affects the story. And that, it's hard to translate from one to the other. And you can't expect a story to go from one medium to another without being affected. I think that's the lesson for today, children. Do you remember those shows? Today's lesson, what you're supposed to have taken from this really entertaining thing that you've just watched is this lesson, this moral lesson. That's how television used to be in the 70s. So there we go. The lesson you're taking away from today's stream is that most of the time Drew waffles on for no appropriate reason. But there we go. Anyway, so I think that's it. The medium is kind of does determine the story to a degree. I think that's quite important. So, the old adage of, don't watch the film until you've read the book, I think is a good one, particularly if it's originally a book. But if it isn't, then don't bother. It's probably best to watch the story or read the story, whatever it happens to be, in the medium for which it was originally designed. So if it was a comic book, read the comic book. If it was a film, watch the film. If it was a book, read the book, etc. I think that's probably the best advice. And I've learned that dolphins are clever. And I've learned that I should watch Ulysses 31. And some of you should definitely watch the original Battlestar Galactica. Writing is hard. Yes, that's very true. 42 is the answer to everything, of course. Life, the universe and everything. That's right. So there we go. Anyway, my friends, thank you very much. I hope you've enjoyed so long. Thanks for all the fish. Dear. Very good. Thanks very much for joining the script. I hope you've enjoyed it. I will whack it up on YouTube in a bit as well, just as my general waffles. And I will see you on Thursday for more No Man's Sky. Not sure if the retro stream's on Saturday. I've got a feeling we may be visiting Relations. But if that's confirmed, I shall let you know. But otherwise, we're back on Thursday for some No Man's Sky. And of course, back on Mondays for some more chatting and general waffling about science fiction and fantasy topics with regards to writing. Yay! Take care, my friends, and I will see you soon. Be good. Lovely to see some new faces as well. Thank you very much. Always good to have you along, and see you soon. Be good. Take care. Have a fantastic week ahead, my friends. Bye-bye now.